You Rabbi?
Yeah,
Yeah. Hey, did you see when when we were talking about um the um make sure I'm saying this right. Yashar.
yeah, Yashar, straight. It means straight.
Okay.
Yashar, it means straight line.
Okay, Yashar means straight. And then Igul means circle, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I was see the way I kind of view it is from the standpoint of um how we approach Torah, how we approach our, like I said, our study, but also um, how we approach life in general. You know, it's a very interesting subject because it gives you that framework and, like you said, that tool to actually analyze, to actually um, how you perceive. It's about your perception. Am I following that? Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, keep going.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's all. I just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure I was
yeah,
following correctly.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I just, the thing is not, one of the greatest gifts, you get through Torah study is the concept of like being able to challenge, for us specifically the public school system, right? Because that's really like what our intellect is up against, right? We have the public school system. We have maybe some family wisdom, based off of our unique story, and we have our own, I guess, intellect that processes it, and I guess in our unique way. But at the end of the day, when we look at the public school system model and like what it represents, we have to really think to ourselves like, well, the ideas that shape the way that I view the world, the ideas that, shape the way that I view my relationship with God, like, who and what shape those ideas, right? And and so when we're honest with ourselves, the people who shaped those ideas didn't have very much spiritual elevation. They were people who were thinking of how to find a particular type of intellect, which is like left brain thinking, right? And create a system called education to get the best of those thinkers into our workforce for optimal productivity. Now they're moving more towards the right brain, but most of modern society, is built around engineers and legal frameworks and all this. These are all, left brain skill sets. Even medicine. The way that medicine is taught, and the drugs, chemicals, whatever. Right. So that's being like honest with ourselves, right? And that's saying that, and there's a lot of emotion connected to it because we've seen like a lot of movies and TV shows, and we've read books, and we've had even real experiences, where we were in communities that were emulating, those ideas, and we had those physical connections, right? But at the end of the day, they were all inspired and all educated, through a system that was not created by people of godly wisdom, right? And I mean that's what it is. Now, if someone has a different response to that, and they want to say, "Oh, well, that's not the case," in the system that we were educated in public school, and the society that we were in, and the information and how it's delivered to us, if we're saying that, if someone has an argument said, no, it was created by a godly source, or individuals who had a godly intent, right? Okay, I'm interested. I'm open to it, but the way that I understand it, it's not. It's not. It doesn't match from the Torah that I learned and the society that I live in. It doesn't match. So I have to concede to the point of that the people who design the society that I live in had no godly intent in any of their designs, any of their architecture, whether it's social or physical or anything like that. Okay, so if I concede to that point that the society that I live in, there was no desire ever to create anything, connected to Hashem or to glorify Hashem or to glorify my connection to Hashem's creative process. We can see that that was never the point, and I was actually told not to see myself in any divine manner, but rather as an ethnicity, rather as a nation, as a citizen. And what I think and what I perceive based off of being a citizen and based off being ethnicity, that is determined by third parties. They tell me how to think. Like you have to ask yourself, why do I need a person telling me what's happening when I'm watching a sporting game? And he's running up the side of the field. Now, I understand it during the radio time, right? During the radio time, I understand it, right? There was no visual people, someone was giving a play-by-play. But once TV came into manifestation, why did I still need that person to tell me what I'm seeing? Right? And to the point that I said yesterday, it's like, why do I live in a society where God gave me free will to choose, but the society that I live in automatically labels me and gives me an identity that I have to accept? I don't have the ability to use my free will based off of the social structure society puts me in. Like my free will is out. So why is that the case? God says one thing, society's doing the other, right? Yeah. It's like a reoccurring theme. God says one thing, society does the other. It just keeps going, it never stops. So when it comes down to my life, right? Because my life is important. I have 120 years, maybe more, depending on, God. But I have this period of, to correct my soul, right? To correct my soul, to correct, who I am, make the full connections in his lifetime, and I continue on. So it's a long process. Resurrection of the dead, the whole thing, right? But the point is saying, so this is my process, this is my journey. All right. But the society that I live in doesn't say that. The society that says I should work so many years, I get married, I have children, and then I retire, and then I live off of the pension, and then over a period of time, I'll experience luxuries that are in retirement. I won't have to go to the office every day, all these things, but eventually I'll die. And that's it. That's what your life was. And then they look at your life and say, wait, you know what? This guy paid his taxes on time. He wasn't late on his mortgage. His kids went to colleges. Wow, this guy really was. He was successful. Why? How is he? How do we know he was successful? Because there's a definition of success that society gave us. Right? We used to call it with the white picket fence, 2-car garage, dog and a cat. Right? The nuclear family, boy and a girl. So if you did those things, you were successful. Again, how does that connect to the show? How does that connect? The society's idea of success, of progression, how does that connect us to God? I'm just saying, I'm trying to figure it out. You know what I mean? Like I'm not trying to bully anyone into thinking in any particular way. So that's why we have to talk it out. Why is it that I believe the information that's been given to me by the society? And to say that it's been so ingrained into me, so programmed in me that I at least have enough strength to have enough critical thinking to look at the information. I have enough of ability. I have enough of an ability to I have enough of an ability to look at the world around me and question things, right? Like, I mean, people, we're doing all the time now with health and nutrition and such things, right? Like, so we look at nutrition and health, and then we can look at it and be like, hey, you know what? This is a really popular food, but it's really bad for me, right? And what gives us confidence? Oh, well, you know what? This doctor wrote about it, and it's in this medical journal, and you know, there's a certain organization that really like brought the effects of this particular food out, and and I came to realize that it's not good for me to it's not good for me to eat that food. But still, there's commercials about it, right? There's people having a good time still eating this food. But I came to realize that it's not good for me. And it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. This is what I'm going to do. This is like the concept of like people that are vegan, right? Like they're so strong about it. Like they're like dedicated. They're just like, you have people that, like come to the meal. You have people that come to a meal for Shabbat and they're like vegan and they're just so dedicated to being vegan. Shalom, shalom. They're so dedicated to being vegan, right? And you look at that and you're just like, wait, the human has the capacity to live in a society where the vast majority of people do things in a specific way. In this case, we're talking about eating. And then all of a sudden, this particular person gets some information and says, hey, you know what? I know this is the way my family's eating for generations. I know this is how my neighbors, I know this is how my friends, my cousins, everyone, but you know what? I'm eating vegan, right? I'm gonna eat vegan because this is the right thing to do. So if a person has the ability to remove themselves from the whole lineage of their family's eating habits, what about thinking habits? Is it okay to remove yourself from the eating habits? What about the thinking habits? The thinking habits of why I perceive myself the way that I do. Right? People get mad about the whole blackness thing we talking about, but it's like at the end of the day, like some people made it up. I mean, there's nothing divine about it. Same thing with whiteness. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing divine, or being an American. There's nothing divine about it. You know what I'm saying? They may make it into that because they're trying to make it in the light of the Torah, but there's nothing divine about it, right? And so when we talk about the design of the human being, what the human being is, as we have, a good part of this week, we really have to reconcile, the idea and the point of the person that I perceive that I am was shaped by people mostly who had anti-godly consciousness. When someone came to me and told me my race, told me my ethnicity, told me the story of my people, told me who I am, all these things, those people, even people in my community, even family members, right? Because they were fed the same poison too. The people who shaped the way I perceive myself were influenced or themselves had anti-God consciousness. How are you going to come to people and tell them that they are an ethnicity? Isn't that weird? Like you're now being Adam, the first man, and you're seeing human beings, and you're saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to give you a label. You're a label. This is who you are. Right? Adam gave name to creation. Someone came and gave me a name. And I'm not even talking about my parents. Right? They gave me a whole identity. You're this, you're that, you're this, you're that, the whole thing. And I'm like, okay, I believe it. Why? Because everyone else does. And not only that, and this is the best part, they give me an identity and they tell me, hey, you're going to get the short end of the stick no matter what. But you're going to struggle and you're going to work hard and the world is unjust, but you got to keep working and you got to keep fighting against it. And I'd be like, well, where is it? Where is it? And they'd be like, don't worry about where it is. You will see it. You will see it. When it presents itself, you will know. I'm like, okay, thank you for that knowledge. And so I spend my life seeing myself in this way, looking for things that reinforce this narrative that they told me that I am. They said, oh, well, you're black and you're supposed to have this experience in the world. And, you're going to have these shortcomings and you have all these challenges and there's all this racism and people hate you and nothing's fair. And it was set up for you not to be successful. And look at this and look at that, and you got to fight against racism. And I'm like, all right, yeah, that's crazy. That's real. I'm black. I got to fight against racism. And I was like, all right, cool. So I spend my life thinking in that way. That's not to say that like people get mad when you speak this way because like, oh, well, you're just trying to be apologetics for racists. No, I'm not. I'm just saying like, bro, people are not gonna like you, bro. I mean, we have a whole tour of people not liking each other. I mean, that's racism? I mean, I'm just saying like you could put human discourse under any definition, right? Whether it's people being in love with each other or people hating each other. You could create a narrative of why that's the case. So you create a narrative that I'm a black person and I have this reality, and I'm saying it from the standpoint of I'm saying it from the standpoint of like people be kind of coming to you and they be what he's kind of coaching you in. Hold on. You hear me? Hear me okay? Okay, all right, cool. So anyway, but on that point, it's just saying that like people come and they'd be like, and I just I love having these like conversations with like, Muslims and pro-Palestinian people because it's like it's a very big conversation. It's like, the West is reshaping the Middle East. You know what I mean? And it's very difficult for them to accept that because their whole religion is based off of them being a dominant power, right? And so when they see their dominance come and go, then they say, well, what does our religion mean, right? And so I come to them and I talk about these ideas of American dominance, and they're like, but you're black. You're not Jewish, you're black. Now you got to really understand what they're saying when they say that, right? They're not saying black as it's a good thing. They're saying, no, the Jewish thing is a real thing, and you're not that. You're in a different category. You're in the black category. That's a narrative, right? That's a narrative that they were taught. And they're all like obsessed with it because if I break out of that mode and I say, well, actually, the black thing was something that other people created. It's not really who I am. It's not really who my people are. It's actually a name that was created. And yes, some of us are Jews too, right? Just like we're other religions. But yes, we're also Jewish too. Yeah, we also have that capacity, right? And so that idea it changes your place because if you're saying you're not black and it's just a social construct, well, that means that the perception I have of myself being white or white like or white passing is also an illusion, right? It also means that it's not real of it's not real of um it doesn't have any real lifeblood in itself, just like black doesn't. So if you've been told that you were white, and I was told that I was black, who's telling us this, right? Now the challenge at this moment in the conversation is just like, well, where do you go from here? Once you accept that it's a social construct, right, and it doesn't exist, and it's something that very smart and intelligent people, created, a mechanism to divide people and control them. Good, black, white, we get it. Right? They're both. There's people who they believe in their white race and their white genes, and there's people with their black superiority and with superior genetics and all this stuff. Okay, fine. Everyone's better than the other. We get it. But the reason why these things exist because you can't go any further once you accept that there's a social construct, because once you accept it's a social construct, then you have to go into being a human being. And that's where we're at right now, right? Where we're at right now, we're learning difference fine, whatever, and we're learning about what it means, to be a human being, right? And the question is, it's like, well, what narrative, do we ultimately use, right? Do we use the narrative of the world of the public school system that we were, raised in, all of us, or do we say like, well, maybe that narrative wasn't really designed for me to be successful. You know what I'm saying? All right, so we're in Derek Hashem. I don't know, we have a little talk. We haven't, spoken as a group in a while. So Derek Hashem, we're moving forward to the section of part one, which is on. Let's go back down to structure, right? Because structure is so important. So we have the introduction, right? We have the introduction until you have on the creator, right? So we learned about the creator, the Ein Sof, the purpose of creation, which is this dynamic of the creator wanting to ultimately bestow good, and then mankind being the highest level of receiving that goodness and, and, and fulfilling the purpose of creation, right? Which is using this free will to serve the show. And now we're on human responsibility, right? So it's Beit meets Ha'adam, Jesus' world examined. And on in his parts, in their combination, and the place in in the place in which he put all of that concern. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. Yeah, just I don't know, technical stuff, whatever. All right, so let's go back to it. All right, so we're in Derek Hashem, right? And so we're briefly going into this idea that man has a responsibility. And like as much as we're reading the chapter, also we have to reflect on the fact that we're understanding that man has a responsibility, right? How many belief systems, how many people live on planet Earth and have no idea that man has a responsibility in creation, right? And that's when we talk about the greatness of the Jew, right? Because the Jew understands this. The Jew understands, like, I have a purpose in this world. Even if a Jew is not observant, they still understand that they have a purpose that they're not doing, right? And they got their point. They got their, point of contentment, whatever the whole point is. But the bottom line is they know ultimately that they have a role in the world. And the role isn't just working 9 to 5, right? Or consuming product. They have a divine responsibility. And that's what he's talking about. Okay. Okay. Well, okay. So it says tikunat ha'adam so he says like this. Whoa. The man's disposition is wrong. So what is man's purpose? What is the man dynamic? How do we understand man in this reality? When we say man, we talk about mankind, man and woman, right? Regarding the examination of man himself, we have already mentioned how he is composed, being composed of two opposites. What are the two opposites? The soul and the body. He says, however, we see with our eyes that this is this matronality is dominant in that it effects upon him are very strong. For immediately after his birth, he's almost all material, and the intellect barely acts within him. Then he grows up, and his intellect strengthens, and it grows in each person according to his specifications. Nevertheless, his maternality does not cease ruling over him and directing him towards its interests. Yet, if he grows in his wisdom and he studies it and it strengthens himself in its paths, he will surely exert himself to conquer his nature. Right. So he's talking about like this idea, like we grow up, the young boy, full of testosterone, and he understands how to balance himself out and become a organized man. If he grew in wisdom and studies and strengthened himself in its path, he will surely exert himself to conquer his nature and never release the bride of his desire from his hands, and to push himself to go in the ways of the intellect. The center of these matters is that we see that in the existence of matter and its physical reality, it is turbinility and I guess like being turmoil, I don't know, and the darkness in its nature. He says, and it is very far from and even the opposite of what the true path will become. So we understand the design of man, right? Man comes in this world, it's built with two dynamics. He gets a hara, he gets a tov, the structure of man, right? Right. And that's really the really big part, right? That we really dug out this week is this idea of saying that, hey, the soul that every human being has is only the cloak of a combination of lights that emanate from the endless world, right? Like this is the big idea, right? This is the big idea, right? And so the thing that unifies all human beings is the fact that we all have a body and we all have a soul, right? We are man. The end is the fact that the soul is basically like a book bag, and the soothing, the unique lights that come from in this world, as those unique lights enter this reality, they become cloaked in what we call the neshama, right? And then this neshama, these lights have 613. It only has 613 parts because of the parsufim that are within inside of it. And so these lights come down from the endless world, and then they travel into this reality. And then as they get closer to Malchut, the physical reality, they transform themselves and they become cloaked inside of a neshama, right? And then once they become cloaked inside of a neshama, then they're able to enter a body, a goof. So every single one of us is in the frame of a soul. Like you see guys, like they go on journeys, right? They take their satchel, little like a table, like a sheet or something. They put all this stuff inside and they wrap it up and they go on a journey. That's a relationship between the parsufim and the neshama. The parsufim are the entities inside of the bag. The bag itself is the neshama. So from there, the sages analyze the soul, but we have to understand what's inside the soul, which are these aspects of light. And where do these aspects of light emanate from? The endless world, the Ein Sof. So we're trying to redefine ourselves, right? Like that. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to redefine ourselves, and we're saying that, well, if I'm, a combination of these lights, if I'm a combination of lights, and I come into this world, well, that means something very interesting, right? Because like me myself, I'm an emanation of the endless world. That's what I am. I'm an emanation of the endless world. Not just me, but everyone that I see. Not just everyone I see, but everything that I see is an emanation of the world. And only in this physical reality does it becomes cloaked, right? Just like Adam and Eve, right? They were celestial beings. And then when they went down into the lower reality, right? Then they developed flesh. Right? So this is the reality for all of us. This is Adam and Eve is not just an isolated experience. All of us emanate from the supernal world, and we come into the physical world. But that's what we're working through, right? And so again, I got to ask myself the narrative of who I am, right? The narrative of who I am, is that narrative connected to the public school system? in the people who were influenced by the public school system, or is my narrative about who I am connected to the transmission of God's wisdom through the Torah and its sages? Right? And so I'm assuming a person would say, well, of course, the public school system was not designed for me to be successful. For sure, the public school system was not designed for me to find my uniqueness. It was there to create me and for me to enter the workforce at some point. To get what? A good job. Right? That's the whole purpose. That's the whole purpose of the school system. They never lied about it. They never lied about it. They've always been honest about like their intentions. And so that's what we're dealing with right now, right? We're dealing with um, we're dealing with the fact that, we're dealing with the fact that we're dealing with the fact that these are the elements that we're dealing with, and we have to talk this out because when we're talking about serving God, who am I when I'm serving God? Am I serving God as a black man? Or am I serving God as Adam Kadmon? And we haven't got there here, I know. It's a big conversation. We're just dealing with the grassroots. I'm just saying, like, because they told me that. They told my dad that. They told my grandfather that. They told them that. But it doesn't match up with Hashem's Ratzon. And so I gotta, if I'm gonna really properly serve Hashem, I can't ask Hashem for things for myself if I perceive myself in the way that the world of deceit has convinced me to see myself. Right? I can't do it. Right? I can't look at the world and say, the world told me who I am, and I'm gonna speak to God from that voice. Oh God, make it make sense. God describes me one way. I go along with a different Sita. Who am I holding by? The public school system, US media. And they already told me that they're coming to take me out. They're coming for everybody, right? But I'm saying they told me it's easy for me as African American, as a black male. They're not on my team. They're not feeling me. They weren't building me up in their school system, right? So I don't have the disillusionment of being disappointed by perception of rejection. So again, the point is like this. Hey, so what's going on? Right? What's going on? I've been told a narrative of who I am. And then now I learned the wisdom of Torah and the sages and the secrets and the Kabbalah and all the other sages. And they say, no, that's not the way that they describe me is not true. It's totally different. And this is arguing against the greatest professors, right? The biologists, all these different people. Okay. So anyway, so that's kind of like where we're at today, because if we're going to serve Hashem, we're going to talk to Hashem. Are we speaking from a voice of truth? Or are we still holding an aspect of slavery in our master's opinion when we talk to God? Right? Because the system is trying to tell me who I am. I can't allow that. I can't allow anybody. Nobody who's Jewish, nobody who's Muslim, nobody who's Christian, no one who's a politician, no one who's a professor. I can't allow even my parents. I can't allow anyone to identify what I am. I can't do it. It's sheker. It's deceit. I have to establish that for myself, because if not, I'm going to fall into a process of ideas that are rooted in paths that only benefit other people. They want me to see myself in this way. Why? Because they make profit. How much money is generated and I'm using blackness because I'm black. We can say the same thing about many groups. How much money is generated around the concept of blackness in every area, whether it's health products, whether it's entertainment, whether it's food, whether it's uh, uh, you know, goods and services, all these things, like all these things, organizations, advocacy, legal parameters, all these things. And you know what? And there's people that are a part of these organizations in these banks and all this, and they make tons of money off this black stuff. I'm not making any money. I mean, I wrote the book My Name is a Black Jew, but I don't know. I think I could have named it a lot of things. I still would have the same selves. You know what I mean? But the point is just saying that, like, all these people are making this money off all this stuff and all this influence or alleged influence, and it's because I consented to something. And so did my neighbors, and so did my parents. We just all agreed, and because of that, other people have power. So for me, I'm not into that. I mean, I'm down to participate. You know what I mean? Because there's upsides to being black, there's upsides to being white, there's upsides to being Asian, there's upsides to everything at different times. Sometimes there's downsides, right? Right. So the point is just saying. So for me, I'm flexible, but I know that that's not my identity. I know that it's a construct, right? Just like McDonald's or Disneyland. It's just a concept, and people agree on it. So that's what we're working through this week, and we really went into the image of man, and the focus of man and why man has arms and legs and a face, and where does that idea come from, right? And so we went into it. But any thoughts, reflections on what we're working through? Because we're just working through this, you know what I mean? Like, because it's not just learning. Like, this isn't an intellectual exercise, as you guys know. I'm also saying to other people listening, it's like for us, it's like we're trying to figure out life right now. I was presented an idea about who I am and what life is. And I gotta ask myself, the people who gave me that information, were they godly people? Did they have my best interest? Were they designed for me to be successful? I'm saying, me personally, as an African American male, I say no. Yeah, so I personally say that the people who designed the public school system and all these other things, they didn't have my success in their mind. In fact, they had my subjugation in mind, right? And so if I could concede that the society that I live in, the public school system, the media, all these different things, all these different things, um, that were just basically designed to make me express myself in a human design that they created with their definitions. 169 chapter. So, Tony is big picture. The point is, it's just saying that. So that's figure out, right? That's what we're trying to figure out, right? We're trying to figure out, like, who am I? And then when I'm talking to God, I have people in front of me right now. When I'm talking to God, who am I speaking as? Am I speaking as the entity that God created? Okay. And people struggling out here, you know what I mean? But anyways, but the point is saying, when I'm speaking to God, am I speaking to God in the frame? Israelis like cigarettes. And when I'm speaking to God, am I speaking to God from the standpoint of me as it relates to the narrative that I was given, or am I speaking to God from the understanding of who I am through His wisdom, right? And that's what we're trying to say. Like, what voice am I speaking to God from to even start with? Anyway, so anybody have any points they want to jump in and suggest?
Shalom, can you hear me, Chief Rabbi?
Yeah, great, great.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I
Okay.
can hear you great.
Okay. Yes, I was just thinking about what you were saying about the just what we have been pretty much in our communities just taught, as far as like that we are this, we have these labels and so forth. And I just kind of my mind just kind of went back to looking over my grandfather, great grandfathers, my great grandmother. I was able to get, access to their birth certificates and so forth, right? And just looking at the fact that they were not even they weren't even called Black. On their birth certificates, it was Negro. And so it's just very interesting to see how much society and just the social constructs that we have been a part of, how they have the ability to just change a person's title, I guess, whenever it's convenient or not convenient, or whenever it just kind of doesn't go with the way society, I guess, is going. And so my thing is this, that you're just wondering, um, as children, of the Most High, is when we look at, just the changes, it could almost make you feel like where where do I fall into place with all of this, and how do I, begin to come out of all of this that has been placed upon me. And we have been put into a system where 12 years, maybe a little bit more, if some of the children are put in like the pre-K programs in the West, that they are being, just basically indoctrinated with all of these different narratives, and there is no godly um, structure at the forefront. Even when I was young and in school, I mean, there were some teachers who you would hear them say something about, prayer, but it wasn't a overall, you know, uh, push at the forefront of what we were experiencing at all. It wasn't like we were showing up and they were teaching us
My
how
boy,
to
put
work
these
through
rims in there.
a
I need to
siddur,
move one.
and learning
Hey, hold on.
how to dive in.
Boys, put them
So it's
rims
just
in there.
it's just a lot of different things that you think about.
No, you know what? No, don't worry. This is for my truck. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, and I think it's really important, and I think God has made it very evident to us the agenda of like the public school system and the media for everybody, right? No one's winning in it, right? Everyone's suffering. Anyone who believes that narrative suffers, right? So I think it's pretty clear, and I think God has made it, especially in our generation, even more clear. Because back, you remember, there was a time when people like trusted the TV before the era of fake news and all that. Like if they saw it on TV, that was it. And so that manipulation mechanism, is kind of like in a way become like brought to light in a lot of ways over the last like maybe 20, 30 years. And and so like now, like when, we look at, society, as a whole and everything that's going on, I mean, we could look at it and just really kind of like make a decision like, well, how do I want to define myself? And that's the start. Like, how do I want to define myself? If I'm saying that, if I could go in my closet and choose what outfit that I want to put on a particular day, in the same way, every day I'm choosing a particular a point of self identity, right? And so this point of self identity that I've been given in society, has, led me to the point where, I have very destructive views of who I am, right? And what I'm capable of and what my role in society is. And we're learning that the human being is connected to the endless world, to the endless part of creation. But then you put me in the society, and I feel the best that I can do is work at this status in society because I went to these universities. You know what I'm saying? So the whole potential of the human being is completely attacked and destroyed, and you're subjugating them like insects into like these different departments that work as a collective, right? So you have insects here, insects there, insects there. This ones do this, these ones do that, and then you have a collective, right? And so that's where the Torah is getting us to, is to say like, wait, am I talking to God in a description of my identity that's completely false? And if I'm talking from that perspective, how can God hear me? Now, obviously, God can hear everything and clear through anything, right? But I'm just saying, like, in terms of my relationship, right? It's like you hear about this, you hear about these guys who are spies, right? And they go to these different countries, whatever, they're spies, and they get married and they have children and this whole thing. But the man or the woman that they're married to never realize that this person's a spy, you know? And even though they have the perfect life, you know, they have the kids, the house, the whole thing, but because this person was never able to be honest about who they are completely, you know, even though they had the family, even though they had the perfect look, it still was no intimacy. So it's the same thing like with us talking to God. If I'm talking to God from the perspective of the identity that the world gave me, then does God hear? I mean, what's my relationship? But I'm talking to God, and every limb in my body and my whole existence is expressions of His world and His worlds, and I'm an expression of all of creation. And I want to remove that perception that I'm separate from the very thing that I am, which is everything around me. Okay, so then that makes sense. But if I'm not in that place and I'm talking from someone else's narrative to God, I could have a problem. Anyways, we'll continue on. We'll do a short thing tomorrow before Shabbat. But that's where we're at today. We're just like, hey, what voice am I talking to God in? The narrative of the world or the narrative of God? Baruch atah Adonai